Michael Patterson, a state trooper, 38 years old, took great pride in his role as a police officer above all else. Patterson didn't have an easy life. He was raised by his mother alone because his father died suddenly just a few months before he was born. They always struggled financially to make ends meet, not to mention the social pressure his mother faced for not getting married again. And she became the only independent single mother in the neighborhood, maybe for this reason and for many other reasons. When it was time to choose what he wanted to study, Michael had no doubt about what his choice would be. "I want to be a policeman, Mom. I'll become a policeman and take care of you forever." But the reason we're telling this story isn't to find out why Patterson became a policeman, or how much he loved his job, or how good of a policeman he was. It's about how fate twists and turns, and how life can bring two paths together for two people who had never met before, and how that meeting would become a turning point in their lives that they would never forget. That's what Michael discovered one quiet summer morning, during a traffic stop in one of the city's hotspots. Throughout his career, Patterson made thousands of traffic stops all over the city. It wasn't his favorite thing to do, but it was part of the job, and he did it without complaint. In fact, he was one of the officers with the most citations on his record. Every time he saw a driver doing something they shouldn't be doing on the road, he would quickly pull them over and give them a ticket. In most cases, most of the tickets he wrote were for speeding and not wearing a seatbelt. However, that morning, the ticket he was about to write was completely different from all the previous ones. In fact, he wasn't going to write any ticket, because just as he was about to do so, he got one of the biggest surprises of his life. A few hours after the checkpoint, Patterson noticed a white BMW driving in the next lane. But what caught the officer's attention wasn't the speed of the car, nor whether the driver was wearing a seatbelt or not, but rather the dark-tinted windows that exceeded the legal limit allowed in the state of Texas. Upon seeing it, Michael wondered how the driver could see through those dark windows, so he quickly pulled the car over to prevent the driver or anyone else on the road from getting hurt. If the tint affected the driver's vision, it's amazing that there are people who don't realize how dangerous window tinting can be. You can't see anything through those windows. "Sooner or later, you're going to have an accident," the officer said angrily, avoiding the situation, and pulled the car over to stop it. Inside the white car, the driver quickly pulled over to the side of the road as soon as he realized the police car was blocking his way. When he got out of the car, the driver seemed a little annoyed, and he didn't seem to understand why the officer was forcing him to stop. "Why did you stop me, officer?" "I was barely driving at 50 kilometers per hour. It seems to me that on this part of the road, you can drive up to 80 kilometers per hour. I wasn't breaking any rules, was I?" the man said, a little annoyed, but without losing his manners at any point. He was very polite. He was a large adult man, probably between 50 and 60 years old, maybe even older. Michael didn't think he was the type to cause trouble or get into an argument about why he got a ticket. Michael didn't want any problems, so he quickly told the driver why he was stopped, which left the driver very confused. "Is it really against the rules to have tinted windows like this?" "I swear I didn't know. I feel really foolish. I've been in law enforcement my whole life, you know. I should have known this wasn't allowed. Maybe it's something that comes with age. Please forgive me." The driver, feeling guilty about the mistake, said. The fact that he was a former police officer surprised Michael, and he started to look at him very differently. "Were you a police officer?" Patterson asked, extremely surprised. "Were you?" "Yes, son. I was a police officer for more than 30 years. That's why I feel so embarrassed, because another officer should have stopped me to warn me that I was breaking the law." "What a disaster it is to grow old," the man said with a smile, putting his hands on his head. "Don't worry. When I'm your age, I'm sure I'll make mistakes too. Besides, it's not that serious. The important thing is that you know it now and you can fix it," Patterson replied, trying to downplay the seriousness of the matter. Suddenly, the two men began to feel more at ease, and what was supposed to be something unpleasant and full of technical procedures at first ended up becoming a friendly conversation between friends, because they didn't know it yet. But that first meeting would be the beginning of a long and deep friendship, A friendship that perhaps began long before that summer morning. On the way, it turned out that the man's name was Matthew Bailey, and that he was one of the best police officers of his generation, which attracted Patterson's attention even more, and he couldn't help but want to know more about the mysterious man he was about to find. While they were talking, Michael discovered that Matthew had worked as a police officer in another city not far from there. It turned out that Matthew had been a policeman in the city where Michael grew up and lived until he was a teenager, where his mother still lives. I was a police officer in the municipality of Piscataway. My mother lives there. I was born and raised there with her until I graduated as a police officer and was transferred here. What a coincidence, Patterson said enthusiastically, but now Bailey was the one interested in him. Suddenly, his facial expression changed, and it seemed like he remembered something when he looked closely at Patterson. After a brief moment of silence that Patterson didn't quite understand, Michael asked about his year of birth, and he told him he was born in 1991. Upon hearing that, Michael wanted more information. He remembered an incident that happened about 30 years ago, and he felt that Michael was connected to it. It might seem strange for me to ask this since we just met, but can you tell me what day you were born? In 1991. I need to check on something that happened that year, the man asked cautiously. When Michael told him he was born on October 5th, 1991, Michael asked him about the street he grew up on. Michael wondered why all these questions, but he didn't hesitate to tell him the truth. Patterson told Michael that he grew up on Boobley Street and that he was actually born there as well, because his mother gave birth to him prematurely at home. I almost died, you know. Few people can say they were born at home in this day and age, but I did. Why? Is it that important for you to know? Patterson asked curiously. Upon hearing Patterson's answer, Matthew almost startled the officer with a joyful shout. It's you! I knew it was you! Ever since you told me you were born in 1990, there was something about you that seemed familiar. I am the officer who helped your mother give birth to her child. I saved your life, Michael, Billy said with great joy. The turn of events had left Patterson speechless. It took him a few seconds to process the information. Suddenly, the man who had helped deliver him was standing right in front of him. He thought about how less than an hour ago he was considering giving him a ticket. At that time, I was still a rookie, and I had only served for 3 years. I received an emergency call to Poplar Street while I was on patrol. They told me that a young woman named Karen was in labor and might not be able to wait for the ambulance to arrive. I didn't think twice and headed to the house to help her with the delivery. They train us for these kinds of emergencies, but you never think you'll actually have to deal with one, let alone after just 3 years on the job. But I was there next to your mother, ready for anything, Billy explained enthusiastically. Michael was in shock, listening to him intently and trying to absorb all the information. When I arrived at the house, I knew I was going to deliver a baby. Most officers go their entire careers without delivering a baby, and I had to do it after only 3 years of service. I was terrified, but your mother wasn't. She was screaming in pain, but she wanted to meet you so badly, she didn't care. She was guiding me on how to help her. It was so exciting, and I've never felt anything like it again. I'm not a father, and I've never been married, so you could say that your birth was the closest experience I've had to fatherhood, Billy admitted with great enthusiasm, and Michael, the baby Matthew had delivered, almost cried. As Michael grew up, he would hear stories about how he was born with the help of a police officer, and that made him proud. That's part of the reason why he wanted to become a police officer, but he never thought he would meet the man. And in such a strange way, I owe you my life. My mother told me about you many times. The story of my birth was very famous among my relatives and friends when I was young. Some people call me the miracle child, and that was thanks to you. If it weren't for you and your help, my mother would have died during childbirth, and I wouldn't be here. What a great joy, Michael said, very moved, with tears filling his eyes. Do you still want to give me a ticket? Michael asked jokingly. Michael burst out laughing and reached out to hug him warmly, which made their friendship last forever. After he discovered that Michael was the man who helped deliver him, Michael couldn't find him. He was confident that Matthew would handle the window tint issue himself, and he was happy to meet the officer who helped with his birth. If it weren't for Billy, he wouldn't be the person he is today. He owed him everything, and now he could thank him for that. Without a doubt, this was the most important traffic stop in his entire career. Did you like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to keep enjoying inspiring stories like this, subscribe to our channel. Thank you for your support.